Today we're actually going to be talking about the civil services which so many young people aspire for to actually become a part of. And both of you represent the cream of the services. And I'm going to actually start with you, Reba Di, because what you have actually, yours is a voice that one doesn't hear so often. Your husband has been Ambassador Himachal Som. You have been the diplomat's wife who has actually followed him from country to continent to, well, right? And you've actually been rubbing shoulders with the cream of, the most exalted elite society. You've traveled in Mercedes cars with the flags fluttering. It's been right up there as Som's career developed. But when you retire and you've come back to your flat in Noida, when you hung your boots up, it's back to a Maruti sedan, it's back to just finding your way around in a different India. The India that you left, was that 20, 30, 35, 40 years ago. Was it a crash landing? And what exactly prompted you to write this book, which is an amazing book? I would actually recommend all of you to dip into it. Reba Di?
Thank you, Puneeta. Yes, you're quite right. It was a bit of crash landing. But there was also a sense of relief, frankly, because, the idea to write this book actually came about when we were all sitting for lunch at IFS villas, Indian Foreign Service villas, where many of the colleagues of my husband had set up homes, and we all
Greater Noida.
In Greater Noida. And we, as we all sat around the table, mostly ladies, we said, let's throw diplomacy to the winds. Let's, let our thoughts come about what were the highs and the lows of being in the service and the woman's voice, because we are a badly misjudged lot. People see us from the outside, like you said, the glamour and, with meeting the queen, if you will, or whatever. But actually, who were we? We all came from middle-class backgrounds, and entry into the Foreign Service was by dint of merit into a competitive exam. And so we were confronted with a bewildering array of diplomatic niceties into which we were not born, and yet it was a sink or swim situation. And I think we did swimmingly well.
I would agree with that, yes.
So then came the idea that why not pen some of our thoughts about our angsts, about our heartbreaks, about bringing up children in these different countries, about missing home, paucity of funds, all of that. So this was a thought in my mind. And then came COVID years. And then when it was COVID years, because I'm basically a historian and all my previous books have been serious studies of iconic figures like Gandhi and Nehru and Subhash Bose and Tagore and so on. This one just happened during COVID years when I dipped into family albums and took out photographs, and each photograph brought a memory. An old letter that I had kept brought about thoughts. So all this I penned in this book, which has really been a fun book for me to write.
Great, thank you. Rajan, you represent the IAS cadre, and I'm sure after, again, it's a competitive exams, you had to qualify. You actually mentioned a very interesting thing when you were chatting that, when you are at the junior level, when you're posted, there is that initial, at the ground level, there's that heady taste of power because you're out there, you're supervising different departments, etc. But as you go into seniority and you get posted, you come closer to, Delhi, become the secretary, etc., you're meant to be quite faceless. You mentioned that the IFS, they're meant to be seen. They're actually the visible, they represent the country. But we have to actually be at the background. It's like, almost like the unknown. You're not meant to be known, you're meant to actually be following the orders, right? So I wanted to ask you also a similar question to what Reba Di said. The book Anurag shared with me, the cover is really interesting. because this is the before and this is the after, right? The red tape, and then now it's the greenery.
The map of Punjab is at the back, and Punjab is wrapped in
red tape.
Red tape.
Absolutely.
So in the book, I want to show that red tape can be a good and a bad thing.
Right, and you've called it Beyond the Trappings of Office.
Yes.
So why did you write this book, Rajan, in the first place?
Well, I just quote from a famous French novelist, Albert Camus. He says,
just hold the mic to you.
A work of art is a confession.
All right.
So I think this is a confession of what I saw behind the scenes. I have not written about my achievements and what I did in service, more than about the human side of the leaders and of my colleagues and the human side of the administration. So it is something that people should know. People see right now only the trappings, as I say. They see the flags and the people accompanying you and the security guards and the salams
and the sense of power
all that.
Yeah.
But as you have said, that these things are there when you are at a junior level. When you are deputy commissioner, then your word is law. But when from the deputy commissioner's office you go to the secretariat, then you are a simple person, and without all those frills that you have. And when you come to the government of India, it's even worse. Then you're in line and you're trying to get admission for your children, standing in before the principal's office and not getting an appointment. Then you realize that all those trappings, they were only because of the job you were assigned, and it's not intrinsic to you. Well, you asked me why I wrote this book.
Yeah.
I thought that there are things which are commonplace, what happens behind the scenes. I call it the paper curtain.
Right.
So commonplace things, can we make it exciting? So the whole idea is that dull and boring things, if you can make it exciting, I think that's a challenge. And I took it up to put it in such a way and make the truth sound exciting and seem exciting to people who were there.
Great. I want to just go back to the beginnings. Reba, you were a young 21, 22-year-old bride. And when you traveled with Som to Brasilia in Brazil? Brazil? Yeah. That was the first posting that you joined him at, yeah. And you've shared that was your first flight that you took, right? So I can imagine the trepidations, and then just, you speak about how you look out of the window and you see, like you're approaching the city, and the fact that it's not Rio, but Brasilia is like quite an artificial city. But that was the beginnings of you getting into this amazing career. And I've met you in different postings, and I have to doff my hat to you, really, honestly. And I'm just doing a joint question. So, and Rajan, you shared yesterday that you were one of the youngest, or you were the youngest.
I think the youngest in the history of the IAS.
Of the IAS, to join the IAS.
I was eligible by a single day.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I was at a high position for a long time.
Right,
because I found that even though I was senior and younger, others who were junior to me were appointed ahead of me. So the first thing that one learns is that you take life as it comes.
Right.
And it's not necessary that you are going to be blessed with all the advantages and the seat at the head of the table. So that's a matter of chance.
But I want to just actually go back to what were your expectations when you joined as that 21-year-old?
See,
and did they come to pass?
We were a group of young people, 20, 21. Nobody expected anyone would go anywhere. We had not heard of the IAS. They found some others had taken the examination. We said, might as well try for it ourselves.
Okay.
So since I was too underage for the IAS, so for 2 years I was teaching.
Right.
And I was teaching students who were my age or even older. So, but anyway, so when we saw that, I was getting a salary of 350 rupees as a
when you first joined?
university lecturer.
Okay.
And an IAS, the starting salary was 400.
Right.
So I took quite a few months to decide whether to take it or not, because for 50 rupees. But anyway, then what motivated me was that if others are doing it, well, why can't I do it? So we took the exam as a challenge and somehow managed to get through. And when we were in, then we thought that it's a nice and a pleasant place to be working. And I think it was good fun all the time.
Reba Di, what were your expectations when you flew off to Brazil and now looking back?
It was a plunge into the unknown. Because just as Mr. Kashyap has said, even my husband, when he joined the service, in India, he was drawing 400 rupees a month. But then when you go abroad, you have the hope that you would get, you know, with foreign allowance and so on, somewhat things would be better. But it never was better. We were always pinching and scraping our way through. But the initial years, and in fact, my story is really the last century, which is why I think this book is of some archival interest, because the foreign service has changed, service conditions have changed, and so on. But my story is really of a time that social media didn't exist, there was no internet, mobile phones didn't happen.
The diplomatic bag was your lifeline.
Diplomatic bag was the lifeline. Those were the days when you wrote these long letters and inland letters, with some of which I've had in my book too, because those things are a thing of the past. But there was a great intellectual curiosity, because each posting meant a different country, a different culture, different society, different language, different cuisine. So for me particularly, because that's really been my interest, that all those wonderful places which one has seen on maps really came alive. And you're not there as a tourist, you've gone there to stay. So it was hop, skip and jump. From Brasilia to Copenhagen, from Copenhagen back home for a posting, then Islamabad, from Islamabad to New York, from New York to Dhaka, from Dhaka back home for a bit, then Ottawa, and then Vientiane, Laos, and then back home, and then finally Rome, Italy, where my husband, that was his last posting as ambassador. But then the fun was to come even more when after that I joined Kolkata, ICCR Kolkata, the Tagore Center, which really were 5 of my best years, after a lot of struggle with my husband, who thought it was a moment of rebellion for me to go off.
And your son, I would say.
So that was my trajectory.
Right. So, I mean, you know, Reba Di, when you were just drawing the map for us, it looks so glamorous and wonderful. But the book actually talks about all the angst, all the upheaval, you know, the chaos that happens in the family, because you're constantly being reposted. And it comes on to the wife as a householder to bring some semblance of, I would say, sanity and order into the lives of your children and your life also. But the foreign service, even today, I mean, it's interesting. I just want to ask you, do you think it's lost some of its sheen? Because how come very few children of foreign service officers actually join the service? Why do you think that's what's the reason for this?
Well, the world is a smaller place. Travel has become so easy. Going to these exotic places doesn't seem such a distant dream anymore.
Right.
It was for us. And children all kinds of opportunities have now come their way. And many of the children have seen the suffering from within, not the glamour from outside. My children, for example, didn't have the benefit of going to an international school because our government rules didn't allow it then. So they had to go to whatever school was available, if not put them into public schools, which in the case of my children never really worked well because of all kinds of other problems. And so in St. Paul's in Darjeeling, where the school packed up, or Doon School, where my son had a hard time dealing with the seniors. But whatever.
Yeah.
So they have seen it from inside, and so they didn't feel very encouraged, actually, to try that line of career.
Rajan, you grew up in the princely state of Kapurthala. Your father rose to become, I would say, he was the IG of police there.
Indian Police Service.
Indian Police Service.
Yes.
You have actually shared a very interesting, and your book actually really seeps with the integrity that you have brought to your, to your office and whatever post that you were part of. There's a very interesting incident that you shared with us yesterday about the IAS resolution that was passed, where you speak about when you became the Chief Secretary of Punjab, you went to pay a visit to the police commissioner there, and your peers got very offended. Yeah? Would you like to share that? Because that was a very interesting incident.
It seems quite amusing, because when I was appointed Chief Secretary, after a 7 years long wait, for 7 years everyone who was Chief Secretary was junior to me. Right. And finally it was a kind of a chuta, as they say in Punjabi, a swing for 3-4 months. So my address to the officers was also my farewell, because I left after.
Okay.
So I said that whatever else happens, we have to set an example of punctuality. Some of the officers said, we don't have work, why should we come at 9 o'clock? I said, no, we have to. I had my meetings early in the morning. Then, as per protocol, I went and called on all the senior colleagues, High Court Chief Justice, then to the Cabinet Secretary, who was my batchmate. And I even called on the President of India, who had known me from the time that he was coming to Punjab. So, and I called on the people who were colleagues. Now, they passed a resolution, which I learned from the newspapers.
Oh my God.
They passed a resolution that the Chief Secretary is doing damage to the service, and they had two criticisms. One, that he's treating us like schoolboys, wanting us to be in office at 9 o'clock. Right. And second, he's brought down the image by calling on the Director General of Police. And IPS is a junior service to the IAS. Now, Oscar Wilde says, one of my famous dramatists, there's only one thing worse than being talked about, that is not being talked about. So it seems that when this happened, then the papers were full of it. They loved it, that, here is the IAS, they would like to have them in the dock. And I got so much, I got known all over as a person who built in a kind of a propriety and bonhomie with the police, and even now the police officers are among my closest friends. So in retrospect, it was good fun. But at that time, it seemed a little odd, because the service, I thought I was quite popular in the service, but then I realized that here's a resolution. I did not react to it, but I went about my work, and gradually the storm blew over.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, you've spoken about really shaking the status quo. Reba Di, with all your coping and, sort of pushing boundaries, reinventing yourself, all of that, did you manage to bring any changes about as far as diplomats' wives go in the lives of, wives of the foreign service officials?
Well, I think the first thing that I want to say and share, and I've written about it in the book, is that the foreign service wives always felt that they were not appreciated enough. And that, I think, we were the backbone of what we presented abroad. But we were not appreciated enough or recognized enough or remunerated enough, if you will, because sometimes we had to face these situations where we had large dinners, and in those days we had to wait through making hundreds of gulab jamuns and hundreds of samosas with little training, crying our hearts out to give a perfect meal to our guests and abroad. But where was the recognition? We often felt when we went to parties and so on in our Kanjivaram bests that we were like decorative pieces. And then it so happened that I was editor of our ISA magazine, External Affairs Spousal Association magazine, and it was 1998, I think. And when I just wanted to, ask our spouses abroad what they felt about the different the different perceptions that they have of the Foreign Service wife. And that was a Pandora's box that opened. And they all sort of came out with these, their angst, their woes, and this. And then we went up to the Foreign Secretary in a little group saying that let's start small changes, that we were not allowed to work. Foreign Service wives were often very qualified, but there was a blanket ban on wives working abroad. The wives who were junior wives were given the permission, but wives of ambassadors were not. And so we went there, and the Foreign Secretary was a wonderful man. He turned around and said, no, you can't work. So we came back crestfallen, but guess what happened? The next Foreign Secretary was a woman, and the first thing she did was to overturn this.
Wonderful.
So it was, it was a moment of challenge. But I think even writing a book like this for me is really the woman's voice. It's really a woman's story, this one. It's not about the career diplomat, because career diplomats have been writing a lot about career highs and lows and gaffes and triumphs. But our voice is not heard enough. And as I said, we are quite misjudged from the outside, but they don't realize what we've had to reinvent ourselves with every posting. And some of us have been, I think, privileged. If you have, something like writing or singing, as in my case, that keeps our spirits going, many have felt let down in a way.
Yes. Rajan, so did you manage to bring about any changes within your service the fact that you broke protocol, the resolution was passed after that, but something more long-lasting where, was it possible?
Well, you see, when in service, I was there during the time of turbulence in Punjab. And during that time, some interesting things happened. And I found that, how political leaders behave when they're out of power. I found that more interesting. For example, when Mr. Prakash Singh Badal, who was 4 times Chief Minister of Punjab, he was in what is called preventive detention.
Right.
Preventive detention means to prevent him from coming in the public against the emergency and other things.
Right.
So I happened to know the Deputy Commissioner of the district where he was incarcerated, and I went and met him in the Forest Rest House near Dehradun.
Okay.
And I found he was quite stunned to see me there. I said, no, I only come in my personal capacity, nothing official. And he says, I am so happy over here. Biba, he says, the lady district magistrate.
Right.
Biba has looked after me. So Biba says, no, he only asked, what he asked for only agricultural implements and a badminton racket. He says, that's it. No, I'm doing my farming. All my produce I give to my warders, and I play badminton with them. So this is the best thing that has happened to me. Now, I have lost 14 pounds in the last 6 months. And at the same time, my image in the public has gone up. So what could be better than being in prison?
Right.
You build up your public image. Now I'll tell you how
any impact
our
that
behavior, your specific question.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going to mention is an amusing and not so amusing item.
Okay.
When one is young and is brash, I was posted as the DC, and a Sikh gentleman was there. He came at a lunch, and he said that, come, you are coming as DC, you go in the afternoon. There's a lot of floods in my area. There was president's rule. I did not know who he was.
Right.
So as a brash young officer, I was exactly 28 years old. I said, who's he to order me to go and see? So I said, yes, I will go and let me take charge. Now in that one moment, I made an enemy of a potential friend, someone who would have been very important. He was no less than Gyani Zail Singh,
right.
who was after some time became the Chief Minister of Punjab, then the Home Minister of India, and then the President of India.
Yeah.
So the moment he got a chance, he never forgot that slight. The moment he got a chance, I was transferred out from the district, and in another few months shunted to Delhi. Well, I took it as it came, but I mean, this kind of thing, what happened then was that you are prepared for a change, and you are transferred from place to place. Now, present day officers face a greater dilemma because there is very sharp hiatus now between the political parties. The political leaders don't stop now at merely transferring you. So now I think it's more difficult for the youngsters of today than it was in our time.
Okay, so I just want to ask you very quickly, my last question about, do you have any tips for young aspirants? I mean, I could maybe... Rebadi, would you like to go first? Yeah. I mean, people still look towards the IFS, as their dream sort of, I would want to, that's where I want to go, I want to travel the world, etc. But for the wives of these diplomats, 2, 3, 4, any 5 tips that you would give for the wives of diplomats?
Well, for one, I think life is much better now for them. Without fail, in spite of all this, packing, unpacking, and, shuttling round that we do, and the hop, skip, and jump, there is certainly one other aspect of the Foreign Service, which is it's deeply enriching. I am what I am because of all the experiences I've gained. So for Foreign Service wives today, I would say that it's also a great opportunity to learn and to, enrich yourselves. The other point is that many of the rules that were against their working have been lifted. So many of them are able to pursue their career, and that's important. And then the world is a smaller place, so there's social media, there's travel, there's all of that happening. So I think it's not such a bad place to be in.
And I mean, you're a fabulous cook. I was just reading, what was that? Hilsa in Bengal, Pala in Pakistan, salmon in Yellowstone National Park. So I mean, the kind of cuisine that you've been exposed to, I mean, and you are anyway a fabulous cook.
Well, I think I'll give that to my husband. I think he was a fabulous cook. I also love cooking, but not as much.
Not as much. Okay.
I like tasting.
Rajanji, would you like to, come up with any tips for young aspirants for the IAS?
Again, I quote,
You need to do that.
advice is seldom welcome, and those who want it the most want it the least.
Okay.
But if I were to say something for the younger generation, that don't take yourself so seriously, take your job seriously.
Okay.
And second thing is, you said 5 things. Second, consider it as a fun thing. You enjoy it. Be a little dispassionate. There'll be ups and downs. It's going to happen all the time. And your feet must be on the ground. And that's, as my book title says, these trappings of office are only external and superficial.
Right.
Really, it's the human part of your work that is most important. So, if in service, you can make a difference to the people whom you are asked to serve, then I think you can consider that, you have done something positive and constructive. And if you are true to yourself, you can't tell everybody to be tactful, because I would be the last person to give advice on that, being tactless myself. But I think that the human side is very important, and wherever you are, you can make a difference. And I found that the experience that I had helped me after I left service. Then I was working for a non-government organization. I was looking for sports and all. And then there is a great leveling. You don't think that you come from a pedestal to a lower level. If you have not considered yourself at the pedestal, then you're quite happy to do the work that is assigned to you. So I think the younger generation doesn't need advice. They're already smarter than we were in our day. Now, just for your interest, you had asked me, is there any one passage in the book which might give you an idea of where we are? Right. So this I'll read.
I'm just going to remind you of the time left. Sagar? We have 10 minutes left, including Q&A. Yeah. Sure.
This will take about half a minute.
Sure.
See, this is a part of one of the chapters. When a civil servant is required to serve two successive governments who are strongly opposed to each other, he's placed in a piquant situation. I had worked as finance secretary with the Congress government. And in the 1998, the Chief Minister, Kali Chief Minister, again appointed me as Finance Minister. Now, one of the jobs that the Finance Secretary has to do is to write the budget speech of the ministers. So I was forced to write and this gives you an idea of where I was. I found myself duty-bound to record on behalf of the government. Our government is unfortunate to have inherited an empty treasury. The responsibility for mismanagement of the finances lies at the doors of my predecessor government and the incompetent officials who handled and mishandled the finances over a long period of time. So my family caught on this, and they said that you are unfit to handle the finances of the home. Yes. So I was divested of the responsibility. I was protesting that I was the finance secretary for 7 years. So what have you done in 7 years? This is what you have done. So that's the human angle of finance.
Thank you. What I love is actually the vein of humor that runs through both your books. Really, it really lightens up. Reba, would you like to read a short passage?
Well, this is just an experience. This is just a little experience we had in Laos, in Vientiane. I had been told that the Lao people ate everything that stood which were not tables and everything that flew that were not planes. To my alarm, I found scorpions scurrying along the garden path. Our gardener nonchalantly picked up one and kept it tied with a string. When I asked him what he would do, he smiled again, saying that would be his lunch, when he would singe it with a lit match and then sprinkling some salt would crush it heartily. My mind was, however, not set at ease by this, as I saw on numerous occasions the ominous pincers of the scorpion protruding from the strainer of the wash basin just when I was washing my face, realizing that the scorpions effortlessly glided up the drain pipes to our first floor bathroom. It truly felt like we were back to primitive living. The icing of the cake, so to speak, came when I called the plumber to ease the draining of the bathtub since the pipe was clogged. He appeared with a live fish in a plastic bag, which he promptly emptied into the pipe, assuring me that it would eat through the slush as it traveled down. So we were really back to nature, and that no chemicals needed, no organic treatment.
A very sustainable way of clearing out, your bathroom clog. All right, so we have 5 minutes left for Q&A. Any questions from the audience? Can the lady have a mic, please?
Namaskar, sir, and very good morning. My question to you is that how IAS has changed you into a personality, like you entered like a teenager, and now you are a very young man. How this has really changed, like psychologically, how this has changed you? And another question is that, when people get into IAS, they have to go through the 2 years training. Don't you think that we should propose IAS academies who take the entry of the people who are young aspirants of 16 years of age, similar to that of the NCC camps that we have established, so that we get the better militants and people. So I want to take what your experience has been and your take on this training program.
Well, I can only mention here that the academy can't teach you anything. It, it can just kind of develop you. There's nothing new that they'll teach. What you have learnt at in your mother's lap and the families that you have come from, that is more important. I think in the service what you can learn is to say to bear everything with a lot of equanimity and consider that you are going to have lots of ups and lots of downs. Getting into the service is the difficult part because you are competing with 3 lakh boys and girls. In our times it was just 30,000. So after that it is plain sailing. If you do not bother about wanting to make a difference, it is so easy. You need not take a decision and you will be quite successful. But
Don't bother to make a difference, okay? All right, okay.
if you don't mind, since this is a literary festival, it would be incomplete without my little contribution to the festival itself. I had written a sonnet. Sonnet, as you know, is 14 lines about the Jaipur Literary Festival. And if you had 5 minutes, so this will take about
Please go ahead.
65 seconds. This is a symphony in blue. I wrote it just for the festival. It is a backdrop to the Jaipur Literary Festival 2014. Set green in the desert, a princely grace beckons you with love in these forts of old. Silhouetted in rose is grand palace face. Evenings a vision of bright pink and gold. Chilly air of winter springs warm with life. Awesome women and men lightly descend. What brings them here? Speculation is rife. Strong feelings, new thoughts, their presence attends. From all corners of earth, set wide and far, precious gifts to the show they donate. With blue ink and letters, they gently spar. Let's sit and applause this heady debate. And lastly, transfixed, we gaze this miracle on cue. Our city of pink is suddenly blue.
Thank you so much, Rajan. I think I will end on this note. Is there a book signing? Okay, so the authors, if you have any questions, please, they will be available in the book signing tent. And yeah, you can ask them your questions, get your book signed. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Reba Di.
Great pleasure, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.